Okay, today is Lesson 5, Distance Learning for Pre-Calculus. We are talking about identifying which conic section you have depending on the equation. So it's kind of like a review of the stuff that we've done in the previous 3 lessons. So I'm going to give you some conic section equations, not written in standard form. So for example, 1, 2, 3, and 4, these 4 examples here, they'll all be written in this non-standard form. And then your job is to identify which conic section it is, rewrite that in standard form, and then give all the key characteristics and sketch the graph of the conic section. So basically it's a review of the other stuff. Today's lesson, or today's video, I'm just going to be going over how to look at the equation, identify which conic section it is, and then from there you can do what we did on the previous 3 lessons. So let's go ahead and get started. So basically, every conic section can be written in this form. Now, the A and the B value, A, B, C, D, and E are all just representing numbers. Positive or negative, some of them could be 0. As long as both A and B are not 0, as long as they're both not 0, you'll get a conic section out of it. So, if A equals 0 or B equals 0, and they're not both 0, then you're going to get a parabola. You're going to get a parabola because basically you just have a y squared or you just have an x squared. That makes it a parabola. Now, if they're the same, so if A is equal to B, so if these are the same number, if they're the same positive number, the same negative number, doesn't matter. If it's the exact same number and they're not both 0, you're going to get a circle. If they're different numbers, so let's say A is not equal to B, so they're not the same, and they have the same sign, in other words, they're both positive or they're both negative, you're going to get an ellipse. And lastly, if A and B have different signs. So in other words, this means one's positive, one's negative, then you're going to get a hyperbola. So we're just going to go through, work through each of these problems, identify which one it is, and then your job on the actual assignment is to identify what it is, and then rewrite it in the standard form by doing the complete square, and identify the key characteristics for that, and sketch the graph. Key characteristics for each conic section is listed on the assignment, so that way you know what you're going for. Alright, so let's look at the first one here. So here we've got y squared plus 8y plus 20x plus 76 equals 0. We notice there's no x squared, so this has to be a parabola. In this case, it's going to be a parabola that is opening to the right because the y squared, not the x squared. And because, well, actually, it might be right, it might be left. We don't know until we put it in that standard form, and we find out what that p-value is. If the p-value is negative, it's going to open to the left. If the p-value is positive, it's going to open to the right. But it's going to be a parabola regardless, and it's going to open horizontally. So the directrix will be vertical, and the axis will be horizontal. It'll open like that, or that. All right, let's look at problem 2. So problem 2, we have an x squared and a 4y squared. So they're both positive and they are different numbers. So A is not equal to B. The x squareds and y squared coefficients are different and they're both positive. So here we get an ellipse. Right, remember you would group those, you'd subtract 21 over the other side, right? Complete your squares, divide over, so it's equal to 1. Whichever has the larger denominator tells you which is the major axis. So the larger denominator in this case is going to go under the x squared, right? You'll see that if you actually do the work. But here, if you divide, right, you'd have 4 factored out of the y's, 1 factored out of the x's. So the denominator on the x is going to be larger. So your vertices and your foci are going to be horizontal from your center. And it's an ellipse because those are different. All right. Let's look at problem 3. So problem 3, let's do a different color here. We have a negative 4x squared and a 9y squared. So here we have a positive and a negative for our coefficients, for our x squared and y squared. So this is going to be a hyperbola. Hyperbola. Now, if you look at it, you would assume that you would have a vertical transverse axis because the y squared is positive, but we don't know yet if through a work of rewriting it in standard form, whether or not we're going to get a negative over here. If we get a negative over here when we rewrite in standard form and then we divide by a negative, dividing by that negative would make this positive and that negative, and then it would actually give you a horizontal transverse axis. So make sure you go through the steps of actually rewriting the equation in standard form. All right, lastly, we look at problem 4. Problem 4, we have a negative 10x squared and a negative 10y squared. So they're both negative, but they're the same number. So throughout the work here, when you go through it, right, you would end up getting positives. And this is going to be a circle. Now, if you look at problem 4, a trick that you can do is you can say I got a negative 10, 240, negative 20, negative 960. All of those are divisible by 10 or by negative 10. Your first step with this problem could be divide everything by negative 10. Rewrite it as x squared plus y squared minus 24x plus 2y plus 96 equals 0. And then it's really, really apparent that that's a circle. Okay, so basically, that's the new part for this lesson, or for this assignment. What you're doing is you're just taking what we did the last 3 assignments with parabolas, ellipses, hyperbolas, and circles, because circles were in there with ellipses. And I'm giving you 6 problems for the assignment, and your job is just identify what it is, parabola, ellipse, hyperbola, or circle, and then rewrite it in standard form, identify the key characteristics, and sketch a graph of it. So let me know if you have any questions, and that's it. Enjoy this review week.